Okay, here we go. Greatest movies of 1991. The next movie on the list is 1991's, of course, The Last Boy Scout. The Last Boy Scout is a Tony Scott film written by the great crime screenwriter, if you want to call him that, crime/action screenwriter Shane Black. He always sprinkles a bit of comedy in his movies. Most of his movies take place during Christmas. There's a lot known about Shane Black. The guy broke a lot of records in his time, including getting a lot of money for his scripts. This, I think, was one of the first, if not the first, of his scripts to break records. It was around $2 million that he got for just writing the script for this movie. Through the course of the film, he also had to rewrite, do quite a bit of rewrites on the film, because The Last Boy Scout had an extremely troubled production due to just a lot of butting heads, a lot of male alpha energy on the set, especially Bruce Willis, who was probably at the height of his career at the time, still coming off of the massive success that was Die Hard, still in major action star mode. All of the movies he did after Die Hard were primarily action movies, and they were all trying to recapture the success and the energy and the lightning in the bottle of it all that was Die Hard. And this was also trying to recapture the energy from Lethal Weapon, which was produced by Joel Silver, who also produced this film, who is also one of the alpha males on this film that caused a lot of the friction. He was constantly trying to take over the production and butting his head in perhaps where it didn't belong, not letting Tony Scott take over the creative. And Bruce Willis was also very, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. He was very, what could be considered difficult, but he was at the beginnings of his career still, or he just was riding this wave, and he knew how sensitive it was, a sensitive area he was in his career. So he was like, I remember hearing he was, one of the script changes was due to the script showing some similarities to Die Hard and him not wanting to repeat himself. So he was constantly trying to stay in the same genre because he knew it was safer for his career, but he also didn't want to repeat himself. Certain plot points, including specifically with the wife character in this, because there's also the wife character in Die Hard, and he didn't want any parallels or similarities with that. Now, this movie is far from Die Hard. This movie is also far from Lethal Weapon. It's very, very unique. I think that's why people and fans respond to it in the way that they do. So yeah, you got Joel Silver and Tony Scott butting heads with Bruce Willis. Also, Bruce Willis and his co-star Damon Wayans didn't get along. So everybody is just fighting and saying, no, I got a better idea. No, I got a better idea. And everybody wants to be the captain. Everybody wants to steer the ship. Too many cooks in the kitchen, that classic tale. And it caused a lot of friction. And I guess, I don't know if it was primarily an unhappy set. I'm sure there was some good times as well, because that energy is definitely, it comes across on the screen that there's a lot of fun being had in this movie. But another fun thing about the Joel Silver and Tony Scott headbutting is Tony Scott's next movie was True Romance. And in True Romance, there's the producer character, Lee Donowitz, and it's reported that he was heavily based on Joel Silver, specifically Tony Scott's experience with Joel Silver on this film, and that bled into the Lee Donowitz character as far as how he directed Saul Rubinek to perform that character, to act that character, which I don't know how true that is, but I love that story if it is true. Especially since I'm such a fan of True Romance, as a lot of people are. The film here stars kind of a bitter, down on his luck, kind of depressed detective type. It kind of plays like a detective novel, like a crime novel. He just doesn't give a shit about anything, and apparently that is that comes from the fact that Shane Black was in a bad place when he wrote the script. He was coming off a breakup. That's why the original script had a lot more of the wife stuff in it. So that's why he is such a bitter pill in this movie, is because that's where Shane Black was at the time. That's where his headspace was. So I find that interesting too, as far as his process, that, a lot of writers, they'll put themselves in the script as far as where they're at. I think it's very smart for writers to do that, because especially when you're in a situation where it's your job, you have to force yourself to write. There's nothing worse than forcing yourself out of your comfort zone, or just trying to write happy when you're depressed, trying to write depressed when you're happy. It's better to channel wherever you happen to be at the time, and that's what he did here. The editing was also hard in this film, all the post-production, and one of the reasons for that was it's reported that Tony Scott shot a ridiculous amount of footage for this movie. Like, the movie would have been like 5 hours or something, and every time they tried to cut it, it was just like a mess, just like a confusing, muddled just mess. And they brought on several, I think they brought on 3 or more editors for this film. One of them was Mark Goldblatt, which he had reported, he had said that he had never seen this much footage shot for a film. And then eventually they wound up with an editor, I think maybe it was Stuart Baird or something, I can't remember. But he was the final editor, and he was able to save the production in the editing room. He was also brought on to movies like, I think it was Hudson Hawk, definitely Demolition Man, other movies that were troubled, that were tough to piece together in the editing room, which I had not really known until I had heard that about this movie. But when you see this movie, it kind of feels that way. You can see it because it has that kind of the same kinetic energy that Tony Scott would carry over into True Romance. Just like, you can tell, like, a lot of footage was shot, and there were a lot of options in the editing room. But it's part of the style, and it's part of the, like I said, the energy of the film. I think it actually wound up, in the end, even though it was a nightmare to get through the editing, it wound up benefiting the film. This movie eventually failed at the box office, especially considering they thought this was going to be the next Die Hard. They thought this was going to be the next Lethal Weapon. The amazing, there's just like the crazy amount of money that Die Hard made. They were expecting at least around the same ballpark. This made far less, especially when you consider the $2 billion Shane Black script price tag. I think the movie, when all was said and done, Last Boy Scout brought in around $8 million. So, and the script alone was $2 million. So you can imagine how much the budget on this film was, especially when you pay the actors and everything. So it's like, yeah, this movie did not do well. Critically, it was a massive split. I remember at the time you had people who thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and other people who were just calling it a bad movie, you know. And to this day, it's still kind of split. I think Rotten Tomatoes is around 50, so it's pretty split. Famously, Shane Black and Tony Scott both not disowned the film, but both came out and say, we don't like this movie. We think it's a fail. We tried for something, we weren't able to achieve it. But recently, I heard that Shane Black was at a screening. He actually showed up to a screening of this and was shocked when the crowd was responding in the way that it was. They were laughing at the jokes, and they were cheering and reacting and just having a blast. And at the end, there was the Q&A, and he says, "I can't believe this. You know, I thought this movie was a failure. I didn't know it played for a crowd. It would play for a crowd as well as it just did." So he was like shocked. He was like, "Wow," because this movie is another one of those movies that kind of has stood the test of time. It has its nostalgic fans from the past, but it's also the type of movie that has the ability to form new fans. It has a lot of funny moments. This one in particular, where his daughter shows up with her pet, like stuffed animal puppet, and he's like doing a little comedy act. All the while, the bad guys are there with guns on him, and they don't realize that there's a gun hidden in this puppet, and then he winds up, you know, getting the jump on them and that's how he gets out of this situation. There's another funny thing where he's like, "You touch me again, touch me again, I'll kill you." You know, where the one goon is like keeps punching him in the chair. It's like, hey, he's laughing. I think it's Kim Coates, famous character actor Kim Coates, in that scene. And then Bruce Willis keeps telling him, like, "Touch you again, I'll kill you. Touch me again, I'll kill you." And then he just like keeps punching him, and he just like fucking headbutts him in the nose and shoots the bone of his nose into his brain and kills him in one blow. And the other goon is like, "You just shot his nose into his brain. What the?" You know, he's like all shocked. So many one-liners. This is such a quotable film. And Damon Wayans is great in this too. This also has an early Halle Berry performance. She plays Wayans' girlfriend. That kind of launches off the detective story at the center of this movie. Danielle Harris is in this movie as Bruce Willis's daughter. Everybody in this is just really strong. There's a bunch of just awesome character actors who pop in and out. The movie is based around the world of football, but it doesn't have that much to do with football. But the film opens with a famous, depending on if you know the film, obviously, like infamous scene where a football player is playing the game and he has the ball and he pulls out a gun and he starts shooting the other players on the field as he runs with the ball, and then it ends with him, do himself in. The movie is something special. They don't really make action movies like this anymore. If I had to compare it to something within the past 20 years, I would say that came out, I would say maybe something like Crank. If you're talking about like energy, because it's also like a bit raunchy, and the humor and the fast pace of it all. But this movie is just so good. Like my favorite Tony Scott movies are like this one, True Romance. I like his the movies he did in that era. I like his later stuff too. I think he's such an interesting director because in the 80s he had stuff like The Hunger and Revenge, which I kind of put together. I think this was like the start, and then also, of course, Beverly Hills Cop 2. But then this is the start of like his. There's a little bit of that in Beverly Hills Cop 2, but this is the start of his '90s style. This, and you can watch this with True Romance, and they're very, very similar in the way they look and the way they feel. And I'm a big fan of these movies. And then once Man on Fire hit, he did that third part of his career where all of those movies are the same as well, as far as their feel and the editing style and everything. I love Tony Scott's style. I think nobody makes an action movie like him. And then you have, because everyone talks about Michael Bay this, Michael Bay that. Michael Bay borrowed his style from Tony Scott. There would be no Michael Bay without Tony Scott. So people need to pay Tony Scott way more props than they do. So yeah, if you get a chance, definitely check this movie out, because the script is fun, it's unique. It's kind of like a noir, hard-boiled detective story with like a bitter, curmudgeon-y type at the center, and but it's also a buddy cop movie. It's kind of its own beast. It wasn't what was originally intended by the writer, or the producer, or the stars, or the director, but it is a special film. So because of that, I'm going to rank this movie at... Ooh, that's tough. What a movie or classic? That is tough. Man, I don't know. You know what? For Last Boy Scout, I'm gonna put it at what a movie. I just think it's like appropriate for Last Boy Scout. I'm gonna continue watching this movie over and over again. And then as I do, I don't see it going down any, because I've already seen it so much. But it might go up. It might go up. As of right now, just at the top of my head, I'm going to say what a movie, which is a good thing. I don't want to make it seem like I'm dissing this film at all, because it is a special film. It's a special experience. It's not my favorite Tony Scott film. I'd say that is probably True Romance. And since I put these guys together, I would probably put True Romance, when all is said and done, when I got to that, I would probably put that as classic. But Last Boy Scout is like, oh, it's right on the cups. It's right there. But I'm saying what a movie. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your life. Have a good one. Goodbye.
Show up to the party with the wrong face in space. No one hears you scream like a primate. First dates can be long and hard like a phallus. Chalice, drinking like a fiend at the palace.